YouTube. All right, so first vlog of March, ready to go. We've got a big session. We've got a pull day today. A lot more shoulders, a lot more back. So we get into that. A lot of questions, which is good. We run into some information, put out some content, put out some info. We've got a lot around bodybuilding, training, nutrition, psychology, which is good. Tom is here as well, and we are 6 weeks out from the first show. So we'll be having a look over him as well whilst he's here. He's had a deload week this week, so body just got to a point. The hard line with someone doing a shorter prep is we need to know how hard we can redline it and need to know when to pull back. So run most of this prep so far since the start of the year, pretty much balls to the walls. So now we've got to take a bit of a week off, give him a chance to relax, let the body do its job. Deficit's still going to be driving from the nutrition anyway, still doing cardio, steps, so that's still all going to happen. And then now it's just a matter of giving the body a chance to back off, rest, replenish, recover, and then we can push this final leg into the show. So got about 6 weeks left. We'll go have a look over his physique today, and get some training underway and answer some questions. Like, that's why you probably stay asleep once you get there. With obviously taking over my own training, my own coaching to finish off my prep, my cut. A lot of the stuff we're doing now, realistically, is intensity and back off. So we're driving usually our top set or top 2 sets of training to proximal failure. I'm going close enough where the muscle's a limiting factor within 1 rep, if not 2 failure for that top set. And then we're looking at back off sets to finish those primary movements. So a back off set, what we're trying to achieve is usually about anywhere from 20 to 30% reduction in load. I usually set the parameter to about 10 reps. So we're still trying to drive some stimulus, but it's more controlling the fatigue. So I'm gonna get sufficient load out of the exercise, but that reduction in load allows to reduce the fatigue a little bit. I can still take some volume to the muscle group, but then be able to train elsewhere after and still get load necessary to generate force, generate stimulus, generate hypertrophy. So fatigue management, being able to maximize the top set load that I need to achieve, backing off a little bit to still generate some stimulus, and then be considerate of the rest of the program. And especially when going through a deficit, you're not going to have the mass amount of energy that you have in an off-season or growing phase. So putting the work into effective sets rather than dawdling around and adding junk volume to your program, I find makes it more efficient, more effective, and I can get home and rest and recover. After scouring the interwebs and the groups and the Facebooks and the social platforms, got some good questions about bodybuilding. First one is, how long should I prepare before entering my first competition for bodybuilding? And parameters to that question, I'm going to assume we're talking about any bodybuilding style competition, so a physique competition. And to be honest, there's a lot of variables that go into play to consider, that come into play to consider how that should look. The old school 12-week prep, sure, if you're a pro, you're already 10% body fat at 240 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever it is, you can pull that off. But for amateurs, firstly, you need to stop looking at pros thinking that's what you're going to do. You don't have 20 years or 12 years or 15 years of time under the bar yet. If you're looking at your first ever competition, we're considering, I'll usually start with a baseline template of about 12 weeks for most people. 12 weeks, especially if you're in your first couple of years of competing. Then we're going to look at, do you have a history of nutritional awareness or nutritional literacy tracking food? Okay, we're going to add 2 weeks for margin of error. Do you have a history of being lean? Do you have a history of achieving that level of conditioning at all? No? Okay, we're going to add 2 weeks because we know that gets very, very hard. Are there any social engagements, social interactions, things that you have planned that are absolute non-negotiables inside that period of time for your prep? Yes. Okay, we're going to add a couple of weekends, extra weeks in there just to be sure that we have the ability to look at those events and see whether or not you can attend them. Diet breaks. If structured effectively and correctly, we're going to want to reduce fatigue. So we're going to add some weeks in there for diet breaks so that we can take off the mental load of dieting and ensure that you can handle that duration of deficit without losing your mind. Then we're going to look at a whole list of other variables that come into play in regards to like injury fatigue management, looking at your calendar, your work life, relationships, things like that. And then we're going to also look at your post-comp health phase, getting back to normal. I'm a big believer that prep doesn't stop on show day, prep stops when you are healthy. So for me, if we're talking about a prep, we're also looking at 4 weeks post-comp. So 4 weeks post-comp on top of everything else, you start looking at 24 to 30 weeks for a prep. Add to that at least 6-9 months that go into getting ready for stage. If you've never competed before or been that lean, we're going to add probably 12 months to that. So it could be anywhere from 12 to 24 months is my usual recommendation. And that's not just to make money as a coach. I don't care if you do that with me or someone else. What I care about is that you go into the sport for the right reasons, you go into the sport with the right experience, and that you have the best foundation possible to get on stage where they look. Dieting without a foundation, you don't have muscle to present on stage if you're just skinny getting up there. So you need to be considerate of what you're actually trying to achieve. It is a bodybuilding show. Muscle mass counts just as condition does. So be considerate of that when you're considering your timelines for prep. I don't remember if we've spoken about this before, but when you are doing your unilateral work, bilateral, unilateral. Rest sufficiently between each set. So if I'm gonna do my right arm, say I've had 2 minutes rest, and then as soon as I finish, jump straight to my left arm, I've not recovered the necessary oxygen and oxygenation to the muscles that I'm trying to train to then effectively do the next set and equal them out. So when you do this single arm stuff, do your set, actually rest in between, then do the next set. Yes, it's one total set, but you're sufficiently resting, make sure the body's replenishing fuel in between so that you can go again effectively. So we've got two questions that I think are kind of misconstrued in the same point, and that is, how do I manage stress and anxiety leading up to this competition? And what is the process of peak week? How should I approach it? Now, for most people, I think we over-sexualize, over-glamorize what peak week is. Every single person under the sun thinks they're gonna get some like 1,000 calorie carb load refeed strategy coming into their show to fill up muscle and glycogen stores and look bigger, and it's gonna add the chances of winning the show. Firstly, chances are if you aren't in condition, peak week doesn't do anything. You can't fill up what is already fat. You can't make something look tighter that is just fat mass and fluid. Now, the idea of peak week is getting yourself into a position where yes, you are deprived of body fat, you are depleted. You can replenish glycogen stores to fill out the muscle and push it against the skin to make it look tighter. You need to be considerate of how that's gonna land on the day and how you need to manage that look and that loading process so that it comes to the show day and you are in a perfect position to execute that. Now, with that, one of the key parts of that question, why I say there are two misconstrued points, is stress management in peak week, to me, is more important than the carb load that you use for most amateurs. So rather than worrying about, am I gonna have 1,000 grams of carbs, 600 grams of carbs, is it a 3-day refeed, midweek, back end, how's it all gonna look? For most people, you don't have the muscle mass that requires that much carbohydrate loading. So the main things that you should focus on, outside of obviously following your coach's instruction, is stress mitigation, anxiety control. Anxiety control, realistically, if you are anxious leading up to the show, you're either really competitively driven, which is great, use that, it's excitement, not anxiety. If you're actually anxious, there is a concern to me that you haven't done the work required to be in the best position possible. If you have done the work, if you have put in the work and done the thing, the confidence is in the work that you have done to present the look on the day. You know that you've controlled every variable possible. So overstressing yourself now does not add to your look on show day, it makes it worse. De-stressing the body, resting, sleeping, movies, legs up, probably less output depending on your coach's approach, unless you need to keep digging and dieting. Less training intensity, we're usually looking at like 3 to 4 RER in our sets, get a pump, deprive the muscles, the largest muscle groups first, things like that. Then we get our carbs in, drive the carbs where we want to go, turn up on show day as we need to. Sleep, stress management, feed up, do less work. Those are the key strategies coming into peak week for most people, especially if you're, 70, 80 kilo natural or lightweight enhanced bodybuilder. The carb strategy is not that important in the sense that you're gonna have this mass amount of food. You just simply don't have the size to handle it or require it. So the best things you can do in peak week is de-stress the body to allow for an optimal peak of your look. This is a great question. How do I handle feedback from judges for future improvements? That is literally the only feedback that you need between you, your coach, judges. Yeah, it's not the only, but pretty close too. See, this is the problem that I find with a lot of people that get into bodybuilding, any physique-based contest. And that is because they've been so hyped up by their best friends, girlfriends, aunties, uncles, cat's owner, that they assume that they're gonna be perfect, they're gonna win, and there's gonna be no critique of their physique. Bodybuilding as a sport is literally comparing your physique against other people's, based on your strengths versus their weaknesses, or your weaknesses versus their strengths. So to me, the only rational conclusion, whether you come dead last or you win, is how do I take this show and improve for the next one? The process orientation for this sport should be that you are endeavoring to improve time and time again so that you bring your best look every time you get back up on stage. That means you need feedback to see where you can improve. If you're going in there thinking that your shit don't stink and that you don't need to be on the receiving end of constructive feedback from the people that literally judge you and place you in the order of other competitors as to where you rank up, then you are missing the point of why you were doing it. I don't want to hear this whole, I do it for me and it's an experience. That's great. You are still being judged, and even for the experience, the feedback is going to tell you how you have a better experience each time. So if you are to do it for an experience, that being that I want to experience improvement, self-development, improve my physique, then hearing what the judges have to say is the, by definition, growth mindset you need to have. Going in there with a fixed belief that you don't need to hear any feedback from judges or that their opinion doesn't matter, don't bother getting on stage. You are only setting yourself up for disappointment because you are full of yourself and you're also going to hear things you don't want to hear anyway. So just don't compete. It is a sport with a criteria, with a scoring process and feedback. Take it, improve, or take it and don't compete. How do I balance personal, social, work life, and comp prep? This, in and of itself, is a almost fallacy to assume that you can do all of those things. Now, if balance were to mean that you have control over those factors, sure. To imply balance as in equal distribution of effort and energy to each one of those sectors or areas, wrong. A prep, by its sheer existence, is life encompassing. It will require everything that you do basically to get there. The closer you get to stage, the more you're doing in terms of posing, focusing on sleep, conserving energy, restricting movement, doing cardio, meal prep, grocery shopping, these things, plus your training, these things start to add up. So to insinuate that you can balance those work life, social life factors in a prep, I think is misunderstanding the point. To really give your all to a prep, you have to make sacrifices and trade-offs. Now they're self-selected, but self-selected suffering is a great way to enhance self-development. So you are deliberately exposing yourself to something hard, but as a byproduct of that, you simply can't achieve balance in all four of those areas. Some things have to give in order to dedicate that energy to your prep. So the balance you were talking about might be, I spend less time with friends, but I make them aware of it. I'm not seeing my family as much, but they understand because I've pre-warned them what a prep looks like. I'm not going out to eat with my partner, but I've told her or told him after the competition, we can go out for a meal together. There's ways to balance the limited ability and availability that you have by making people aware and trying to compensate in and amongst that. Picnics, non-food related dates, coffee dates, walks, arcades, movies, there's things you can do that will still allow you to have some balance, but they're not going to give you an equal distribution of energy. There's a miscomprehension of how prep should work, in my opinion. You're not supposed to have balance in something that is so intense. It requires everything that you have for a reason. That's why a lot of people can't do it. What are the costs associated with competing in bodybuilding? Again, another one people don't take time to understand the financial component. Actually, if we're even narrowing down costs could refer to health, life, relationships, social interactions, work, finances. Let's stick with finances. One of the biggest things that I think people realize only halfway through a prep is how expensive it starts to get. One of the things we've done is try to create a budget spreadsheet that allows us to put together an expected, projected cost to competing, so that there's at least a foundational awareness of how much you're going to need to have. Now, just in leading up to the show, registration, federation registration, meaning that you are registered as an athlete, divisions, the number of divisions, tanning, if you're a female, hair, your suit, whether it's bikini, whether it's a figure suit, for men, your trunks. If there's travel, interstate travel, overseas travel, accommodation, food on the go, food that you need for your loading strategy. Then you're looking at coaching. You are looking at supplementation, any proactive prehabilitation modalities that you might invest in, manual therapies, all these things that go into a prep that enhancements if you're an enhanced competitor, blood work, health supplementation, all these factors that go into your cost analysis that I've run into people where we get to that window, oh, can I do this instead of this to save money? Can I do this instead of this to save X? Rarely do you want to be trading off something to avoid having to pay for your health concerns or pay for your health checks. You know, you're going into something knowing it's going to be costly, knowing it's going to be taxing, knowing it's going to be requiring certain things. It's not a cheap endeavor. So it needs to be a consideration, not only to manage stress leading into peak week, that you can afford it, that you're not sending yourself broke, but also that you have the awareness of everything that's coming up and it's already pre-planned and you're not being, hit out of nowhere with a new expense that you weren't budgeted for. So having that foresight, that pre-planning financial awareness also helps mitigate stress coming into your shows and helps you prepare better. So there's a lot of costs in bodybuilding that if you're not prepared to pay them early, weigh up what you are prepared to pay and if it's for you. Ooh, what are common mistakes to avoid during my first competition? Thinking you're gonna get your pro card day one. Thinking that you are bigger than you are. Thinking that you're an elite world-class athlete that's above everyone else because other people in the gym don't want to be athletes, don't want to be bodybuilders, don't want to be physique competitors, and therefore you're better than them in the gym because you have the X goal. Thinking you know more than your coach. Running to 5 to 10 different people for advice and feedback, not practicing posing, not structuring your life, not structuring your sleep cycles, not structuring your workload, not preparing people ahead of time that towards the back end of prep you're going to be tired and exhausted and fatigued. There is a lot of mistakes that come with first time comp prep. It's part of why we're trying to build out this course curriculum, psychological preparation, because your mindset and your psychology dictate your behaviors a lot of the time. So preparing people for what is to come and getting them ready for what's coming helps them act and behave in a better way, which usually leads to a better result. The result doesn't come on show day. This is one of the things that I like about bodybuilding, is your result is not determined on show day itself. You place on show day, you stack up on show day, you get on stage on show day, but your result is dictated by the work that you do months in advance, years in advance. So preparing yourself, getting your behaviors right, building this awareness so that you can understand what's coming in a prep increases the likelihood of a better result. The irony is if you go in there chasing first place, having never competed, you will likely not get first place. If you go in there with the approach to attack the processes and the performances every single week and day, you will likely improve your position and placing as a byproduct of doing that. What are some of the less glamorized parts of bodybuilding? This, arguably, one of the most important questions people do not ask about bodybuilding. Social media has led the way to bodybuilding being glamorized and sexualized as this amazing event. Everyone can do it. It's for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It's pageantry, it's glamour, it's beauty, etc. And that is true to a degree. As I've already said, specified suffering is a great way to enhance personal growth. But the less glamorized part that people don't comprehend, especially when they're prepared for it, isolation, loneliness, mental breakdowns, loss of self-worth, body image issues, either pre-existing or developed, an exacerbation to, understand I said exacerbation to, not cause of, disordered eating behaviors. The evidence is not super supportive that preps itself create eating disorders, rather exacerbate pre-existing traits. Loss of change in identity or loss of identity, a sense of restriction if you aren't prepared for it. What else do we have? Health complications, health implications, depending if you're enhanced or natural. The consideration that you are likely taking years off your life. Everyone says enhanced bodybuilders take away years of their life. Natural is somehow healthier. But if you look at what a natural bodybuilder is doing, it takes a lot longer to return to normal hormonal cycles for a natural athlete than it does for an enhanced athlete. Yes, it's because there are exogenous supplements in play, but that is to be considered. You're looking at relational impacts, financial impacts. There is a lot to be considered for the less glamorized parts of bodybuilding. You are specifically identifying the weakest parts of your body you don't like and need to improve, and trying to build those to appease a bunch of people you've never met in order to place better than the person next to you for the same thing. So there is a lot of parts to this that must be considered, and that isn't to talk shit about bodybuilding. I'm the first person to talk about how great it is, but you have to be real about what else is involved. It's like playing NFL and saying that concussions and collisions are not part of the sport. You are denying the reality of the situation to yourself to try and justify doing it if you think that. What is the optimal age to start competing in bodybuilding? Now, I don't think there is an optimal age, but I think there is a smarter approach to this. Jumping into bodybuilding just because you're 15 or 16 and going, I'm going to start competing now, isn't the logical, smart approach. Getting into bodybuilding, let's emphasize the difference here, competitive physique competition. Bodybuilding is a lifestyle system that you want to do, that you enjoy doing. Get into bodybuilding from this lens first, build up the training acumen, the training proficiency, the skills, the nutrition, lifestyle. Understand whether or not you actually like the process of growing and building and cutting and getting leaner, dieting, hunger. And then you start to consider, where does my physique stack up and how do I want to compete? Do I want to be looking at this to go pro? Do I want to look at this to simply just get better over time? Do I want to look at this as something I'll try once? Because you have to understand that if you're younger, you are going to be hungry, you're going to play around with hormonal functions because you're going to be depriving the body of energy. Systems will shut down due to stress and a lack of energy. But also then you have a cognitive decline. Now, I'm a big believer in pushing absolute goals and extreme goals, but pushing that goal and then costing yourself your SATs, losing marks in school, failing school, so that you can potentially maybe become a bodybuilder is probably one of the dumbest things that you can do. You can live bodybuilding before you have to get on stage. That's the key premise of what I'm getting at. So optimal age to start training, young. 14, 13, 14, 15, it doesn't matter in that regard to me, so long as it's not straight into enhancement, so long as it's not straight into like, we're just gonna straight start competing with nothing going on, I don't have any foundations built. The lifestyle of bodybuilding, get into it young, get into it. But progress your physique, push yourself, learn over time, don't rush the process, and you'll see the long-term benefit. You go too early, especially enhancement, we've touched on this before, the consequences of young use or too early, there is a lot of consequences to be played later on in life after you decide that bodybuilding is no longer for you. So be smart about it, enjoy the lifestyle first, know that if you like it or not, then we can look at whether or not you should get on stage. Very different conversations, but that's how I'd approach it. Alrighty guys, that is a vlog 1 for the month. Obviously, as you saw, we got Tom this morning doing some posing, looking fantastic. Had some very solid drops recently. His rates of loss are not something that I would predict for most people, but because we do have a shorter timeline of prep, we are being a little bit more aggressive, sparing muscle tissue where we can, using strategies and protocols we need to. But rates are moving and things are moving well. Very happy to see where we're going, how lean he's looking so far. Legs still have a little ways to come in, but you know, we've still got plenty of time for him at the rate that things are happening. So we're not slowing down, which is good. We're not struggling. Things are moving. He's tired, but you know what? We're lean in prep, and so be it. So that's that happening. Training's done. You saw what's going on there. Obviously, coaching spots are available with myself and Tom, so don't miss out on those, especially if you're looking to compete in the next 12 to 24 months. Let's start now. At least have a phone call and see if you belong in bodybuilding or if we're the right team for you. And we will obviously see if you are the right type of client for us. That is it for vlog day 1. We're back for the next vlog soon. I think we're doing it next week, and we'll go from there.